You're listening to Cottontail's podcast, part of the Silicon Valley Black Project, which produced the documentary film A Place at the Table about the Black pioneers of Silicon Valley. A Place at the Table can be viewed for rent on Vimeo.com on demand /A Place at the Table STEM. Through Cottontail's podcast, the Silicon Valley Black Project will continue to recognize the contributions made by African Americans. We will be featuring African American professionals, technologists in the fields of engineering, administration, and entrepreneurial pursuits from the past and present. Today, we are talking with Wes Hendrix, an entrepreneur and producer on Blacks Radio and also a QA engineer in the gaming industry. Wes graduated from San Jose State University that gave birth to the first internet streaming radio station and one of the first Black websites. As a college student, Wes was exposed to new open source software that permitted live streaming before that form of communication became commonplace. His career began on local radio stations KPIX and KGO Radio. Wes, tell me about your latest adventure.
We have a digital radio station. It's called Black Radio, BLAX Radio. You can get it on Live 365, Apple Music. So if your iPhone or Mac, you can get it on there, or TuneIn, which is also another app.
How long have you been doing that?
Black Radio, I think it's about 2 years old. It's, we, with my history in radio and everything, we just kind of decided to take a swing at this. We've always been active in some form of media, and we've always been fans of radio and everything. So we just, put this down.
Okay. All right. Let's double back then. Tell me about Wes. Who is he? Who are his parents and his siblings and that kind of thing?
Well, I'm a brother, a father of a 20-year-old, son of two wonderful parents who, stuck together over 50 years and showed me the ways of this crazy world and, helped me get into college. And then in college, I was I guess you can call me a little bit of a rebel in college, and that's where I got started in media. I've done radio, TV, a little bit of film, internet media. I work in the video game industry, but all that really kind of started off in college, where we had a crew of folks, and we ended up basically taking over the radio station. Like they did back in the 1960s. We took it over live on air and basically created our own Black programming, which included our flagship show, which was called A Race for the Times, where we talked about race every week for about 5-6 years, starting in 1992. Yeah, that was my foundation. And then I just started doing, TV production, some film video production, and expounded into the internet after that. We were blessed to be kind of the ground floor of the internet, really. Being that we were in San Jose, went to San Jose State. We got into the radio station there at the school, KSJS. And we were lucky that since we were in Silicon Valley, we were exposed to brand new technology. And there was this one software called CUC-Me. And they basically gave us a tryout at the radio station. And this software basically was, you connect video cameras, which at the time were VHS cameras, and you could stream live video and audio on the internet. This is back in 95, I believe it was.
The first live streaming then.
Yep. It was the very first live streaming. And we at the time didn't, we're just college kids doing everything. Yeah, let's do this, do that. So we didn't really, get to understanding what was happening. But we were basically the number one talk show on the station because we aired every week, every Wednesday, like nonstop, rain, sleet, snow, whatever. We were there. So when the software came on, we were the one show that was always streaming live on the internet. People from all over the world, have little video boxes like a video chat room. And so, as we got older, after we left college, we kind of realized it's like, we don't know exactly if we were the first, but we were one of the first, especially Black, streaming internet shows on the internet.
Did any of you capitalize on that?
Oh, no. Heck no.
You had no idea what you were doing.
Everything we've ever done has been independent. Unfortunately, fortunately and unfortunately, our drive has never necessarily been money, even though we like money for doing all the stuff we've been doing for the years, but that's just how it kind of, turned out.
Well, it's kind of the story of a lot of people in Silicon Valley, because it was so open source here. They'd build a piece of software and bring it on a little disk, a little floppy disk, and everybody would download it, and we all had it, and we say, hey, you got to try this new word thing, and boom, we'd all get it, and no one made any money on it, but we were all using it.
Yeah, right after we left college, we tried to continue it on, and this is, by this time the internet was somewhat going, and we created a website back then, and in hindsight, we realized we were one of the first Black websites also. And, this was back before they had any rules on the internet. So we had a streaming radio station back then on the internet. We were called downtheground.com, spelled DAUNDA, ground. It was based on our radio format from San Jose State, based on the Underground Railroad. And we just put, news that's pertaining to Black people. At the same time we were doing this, I was working at KPIX radio in the city, and I had access to the news wires. And I sat at a desk all day running radio shows and at the news wires. And so I would download and print out news that had to do with Black people and republish it on our website.
No kidding.
The clandestine way.
Right. Nobody else is talking about it.
No. So, we were just doing whatever we wanted on the internet back then.
Do you know how many followers you had, or was there any way to calculate?
Well, we had like a guest book. Like every site had a guest book back then, and remember this thing you'd say, "Hey, how you doing? I like your website." Blah blah blah. And we had people all over the world posting on this guest book.
Just couldn't get any sponsors, couldn't get any money coming in.
No, we didn't really know how, or we were just kind of doing it. This is before all the regulations started coming in and get in trouble for streaming on the internet. So we were just kind of, doing it. And we always wonder what would have happened if, we're still doing media work to this day, but if we had kept with that first website,
Yeah, they would have had to grandfather you in, right? They couldn't. Then, if you could have got some money behind you, we might have been talking to Wes Hendrix, local billionaire. So your first job then, was that KPIX, or would you consider that radio station your first job?
Yeah, that's pretty much my first job after college. I did radio a couple places. I worked in TV at KNTV in their news, morning news for a couple years until they got sold. Media is one of those industries where every couple of years the stations get bought and sold. Well, not as much anymore because a couple of the major corporations own all the stations now. Well, back then they were like, we're tired of the station. Like every 3 years, and sell it to somebody else, and people lose their jobs.
I'm going to Hawaii. Here, you can have the station.
And somehow I found myself at Yahoo for a while. They had a streaming stock. They still have it to this day, actually. A streaming stock show. So that's when they first started it. So I was there for a little while.
Were you announcing, or were you doing the background stuff?
Background stuff. I was doing like audio and stuff like that for the show.
Because I remember KPIX. Is that where Dr. What's her name?
Laura Snyderman and Dr. Lord, all of them people were.
Schneiderman was the one I remember the best, because she had the talk show, and she would call on you. Yeah. And see, I didn't know you were working there, right? So I'm listening because I always listen to her and Jim Eason and she said, "Well, what do you think, Wes?" And I thought, Wes.
Yeah. That was just like a little bit after I left college. I was actually, still kind of doing the radio station stuff. But they sold that station because I was trying to position myself like, everybody was asking me to be guest, turn on the mic and say some stuff. And so I was like, I'm about to get in here and get my own show, and they don't know that,
Yeah, because she left. Didn't she go to another? She went national or something, right?
Yeah, she did.
She didn't take you with her.
No.
So I know that you've got into filming too, right?
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, we were lucky because one of these things we didn't know we were doing, but we got access to cameras in college. Back then, nobody had cameras, and all we had to do was go to the IRC and sign a piece of paper. Like, we want to use this camera for 4 hours to do this, and we would get a video camera. So we started doing a couple interviews in college, and then after college, we both got our own personal video cameras and started doing interviews. And here it is. Almost 30 years later, we have about 25 years worth of footage of Black activists, people from the civil rights movement, rappers, singers, a whole bunch of stuff. So we're putting it all together in like a volume series, inspired by Eyes on the Prize, that great Black documentary that covered the civil rights movement.
Well, that's kind of my little wheelhouse, Black history in Silicon Valley. Do you have anything about Silicon Valley specifically?
Most of our stuff we've captured a lot of people who've come to the Bay Area for a reason or another, even if they weren't from the Bay, So we have stuff that we recorded in and around San Jose. But our history is more along the lines of what happened to some of the members of the civil rights movement. Like we have Kwame Ture, who's known as Stokely Carmichael. We helped bring him to San Jose State when we were students. And so we have him speaking at San Jose State. In fact, my partner, Kwaku, who I worked with since back then, actually texted me an hour ago saying that I found it. And I'm like, what are you talking about? He found the interview we did with Kwame Ture. It's the audio radio show we did.
It's just the audio, or did you have the video?
Just the audio. But this has been missing for 20-something years. We didn't know where it was. But we have his speaking engagement he did at San Jose State. We have that on video.
Now, when he came, did he just speak? Was there any debate? Did anyone question him?
Yeah. He had open questions at the end. He spoke for about an hour, had open questions at the end.
Yeah. Lively discussions, huh?
Yeah.
And you have all of that on tape.
Yep.
So actually, you're working on KPIX and you're running around with this camera taking folks. Who are some other people or events that you can recall that you were involved in?
Well, because we came through radio, and a lot of us, we all loved music. We dabbled with interviewing entertainers as well. So we have interviews with like The Last Poets, Public Enemy, The Watts Prophets. We have a quick interview with Amiri Baraka, Boots Riley, a lot of different entertainers. And then, we have some speaking engagement like Kwame Ture. We have Khalil Muhammad. There's a brother named Mikasa Ricks many people don't know about, and we're anxious to help share his story. He organized with Dr. King and organized with Kwame Ture. He was there. Like a lot of pictures you see of the marching, he's standing right there. It's right there next to him. And when Kwame Ture, there's a video of it on Eyes of the Prize and on YouTube. When Kwame Ture first uttered the phrase "Black Power," what we need is Black Power. it was William Acosta Ricks who told him to say that.
Who told him to say that?
Willie Acosta Ricks.
Now, who's he?
So he's just the organizer that grew up and worked with King and marched with King, and then went on to work with Kwame Ture after that era. And so we have a sit-down interview with him. And he talks about Dr. King and talks about Kwame Ture, formerly Stokely Carmichael. Because he was a member of SNCC.
So he came up with the phrase Black Power. Did he ever give you the philosophy behind the phrase, what he was thinking?
Yes. Yeah, which is interesting because that's kind of like the impetus of our first volume of our documentary. Because we kind of want to answer some questions that have been out there since civil rights. Like, I know there was an article even last year talking about what Black Power is, and it's not really what the folks who came up with is. Black Power is more being self-sufficient and creating institutions in our own community, being able to control our destiny and our images and our culture. Basically, all the things that have been taken away from us. Yeah,
it makes more organic than it's been given. I mean, as it's projected. Most of the time, when folks heard Black Power, they thought that meant to take the power away from someone else. It's going to take someone else's power, and that's not what they were talking about at all.
No.
That I wasn't in the movement, but I was trying to get Black Power at the time. And I know what my objective was, and it was really to be able to pay my rent with my own money and not have to depend on whether someone liked my hairdo or the way I wore my clothes, So to me, Black Power meant self-sufficiency.
Yes.
So, and rather than, we didn't want to copy anyone else, we just wanted to be ourselves.
Yeah, more control of our own destiny.
You talked about working in gaming. When did you get into gaming?
Maybe about 20 years ago. I worked for a startup company on the peninsula. It was like an early satellite content company. And right across the street was Electronic Arts, which is EA, which is pretty much the biggest video game maker, from Madden to NBA Live and some of the Star Wars games. And I just found myself going to apply over there, and next thing I know, I started working in gaming, and I've been in gaming for about 20 years, worked at different companies, some mobile companies, console companies, Facebook, internet companies. I'm currently at Sledgehammer Games, which is a subdivision company of Activision. So they make Call of Duty games and stuff like that.
I was just watching a thing about Africa, and they are really into gaming in South Africa, Kenya, Nigeria.
Yeah.
Big time. And the company there, I can't remember the name of it, Scorpion or... Anyway, they were just talking about the money these kids are making in Africa. So, here you can buy a week's worth of groceries there for $30, and some of these kids are winning $22,000 a game.
I mean, game development has come a long way. You can now create a game at your house. All you need is a computer. And so you're seeing a lot of small companies and small people, and Africa has taking it on, like, we're going to create our own games, themed around Africans and themed around African culture. And there's a couple websites out there that you could just, once you create your game, you can just publish it and put it on this website. And a lot of people, go and pay for it and download it and play it. And so even to this, my son even sends me, like, you see this game? He sends me articles about some Africans working on a game. So there's a lot of independent Black developers out there, which is a great thing since we're still underrepresented in video games.
So you started in games about 30 years ago. You've seen the evolution happen then, how it's evolved over time.
Oh, yeah. I remember in fact, still in boxes, I still have my first Atari game system, like the kind we used to play over your house. Yeah, it was a little Pong game. So I've seen it go from that to PlayStation console systems, Xbox, games on your cell phone now, games on your watch, Apple Watch, and games on the internet, 3D games. Now we got virtual reality games. You put the headset on and be totally immersed in the game. So I've pretty much seen the whole evolution of it.
So what part do you play in the gaming companies that you work for? What kind of positions do you hold?
I've been working in quality assurance, which is basically the ones who make sure everything works like it's supposed to work, that it makes sense, that it runs smoothly. So we check out the game every day. There's updates to the game when they add new content. When something breaks on the game, or we figure out a way how to break something on the game. It really has to do with a lot of database work and tracking and hours of checking content. But it's the behind the scenes work.
And do you try to break a game because it shouldn't? I mean, if it leaves there and it can be broken, then you didn't do your job.
Yeah, that's basically our job is to break the game or find out a way it can be broken. So when it leaves or it's launched, it has the least amount of bugs or defects as possible. So because especially now with internet and Twitter and you go to social media, people will immediately tell you how bad a game is or how buggy a game is, and that will lower sales immediately.
The social media has been a boom to people, and it's a bust for people because it is so wide open, and it's just like,
oh yes, yep.
What can't you find out? Different world. They're using it in training too.
Yes, yep.
Firefighters, airline guys.
Yes, most definitely.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Crazy stuff.
Military, police.
Yeah. So tell me about your family roots in Texas. Do you know much about Texas?
I know a little bit about Texas. A little bit about my family in Texas. I know more about my family out here.
So both your grandparents were educators, right?
Yep. Growing up, I used to go to Texas every 3 years for a while, just spend some of the summer out there. And my grandfather, who I never met, had his own school, which is actually not far from Texas A&M. And we have some pictures of it somewhere. But part of it is still standing. There's like a barn, and there's a plaque there. Of course, it was a segregated school, and he was the principal. And my grandmother was a teacher who also was a musical teacher also. So we were both educators.
Did she teach at that school and then eventually go into a larger school district, or did she stay in the black school district?
Yeah, well, she eventually continued some of her work privately. She private music teacher and in the church after the school.
And then your mom went to a historically black college?
Yep, she went to Prairie View A&M to become a nurse. And eventually, part of the Great Migration came out to California, came into L.A. And in L.A. is where she met my father, who has been an engineer, one of the first early black engineers of Northern California, Alameda County, the district up here. So, yeah, they got married and came to the Bay Area.
Yep. Actually, I think he started his engineering career in Southern California, and then your dad came up here as a civil engineer. Yeah.
Yep.
In Hayward. So when we drive down Mission Boulevard in Hayward, coming into Fremont, all that work along there, we can attribute to your father.
Yeah, a lot of different things. One of his biggest claim to fame is when you go across the Bay Bridge and there's the tunnel. There's a little dip that you have to go through on the road when you go into the tunnel, and he specifically worked on some of that part which is still there with the new bridge
to make sure that the trucks didn't get annihilated when going through the tunnel.
Yep, exactly.
See, so there's a little paint where we didn't think it was, huh? He was on the team that determined how that should be designed so that there would not be an accident on that bridge. Yeah, there's so many stories like that of your parents that they would just be behind the scenes doing all kinds of things, but yet never getting credit, never mentioning it.
Yeah, it's something I learned early on in college, is that we have to tell our own stories, because that's how you really put down your history, is telling our own stories. So that's became one of the things that, as what you're doing now, is I became a storyteller. So that's why I'm always finding myself interviewing somebody who's interesting, getting their stories out there.
What would be the most interesting person you think you've interviewed in your time, during the time you've been doing this?
I'd probably have to say the man I mentioned earlier, Willie Mukasa Ricks, just because he was there on the cusp of the civil rights movement. He was there for a lot of the things you see on video when you pull up Martin Luther King or even Stokely Carmichael. And he has all the real stories of the civil rights movement. He told us a story. Yeah, he told us a story where he basically got set up and dropped off somewhere in the dark, and he tells a story. We have this on video. He tells a story that it was him and a sheriff standing there in the dark, and he said the sheriff said that you better get out of here, nigga, and pulled the gun and raised the gun and shot him, and the gun ricocheted off the tip of his skull, and he survived. He took off running and survived. He said it was pitch dark out there.
And it gets mighty dark in the country. City folks don't know how dark it gets in the country. There's no street lights, okay? You can see the stars in the country. It is.
You can see about the stars and the moon.
So, his
stories are amazing. So.
Yeah. Your generations has been affected a lot by the music that has been played. What kind of music influenced you?
Well, I get my love for music from my dad, because me and my sister remember growing up and them playing 8-track tapes and record player going song after song. So, from Sam Cooke to Marvin Gaye to Curtis Mayfield, Rick James, and stuff like that. So a lot of those folks like me who eventually became into hip-hop, that's how they grew up listening to the same kind of music. So you hear that music influenced in early hip-hop. So when we got to the radio station, we played a mixture of both of those things, from music we grew up from our parents to early hip-hop. So that's kind of what we continue to do today with our radio station, Black Radio.
Which do you prefer, hip-hop or early music?
I just love really good music. Hip-hop is probably my favorite, because a good hip-hop song can incorporate every type of black genre in one song. You can hear something with some funk and some jazz and some spoken word, all in one song. But I love all genres of black music. I love jazz. I love funk, blues, soul. I pretty much love it all. Reggae. So.
Well, I can tell you, and I know your father's probably related this to you, we didn't have a lot of stations in Stockton, but there was a jazz station out of Salt Lake City that would come on Friday, Saturday, and I think Friday night and Saturday night, I think. But you had to stay up till midnight to get it, because the local radio station signals went down, and the one so the one from the bandwidth would shorten so we get that signal from Salt Lake City. So me, Pete, Betty, Chris, Voice, Al, we'd all sit in the dark, because my mom and dad had gone to bed, and they're saying, turn the lights off, So we're in the dark listening to jazz from Salt Lake City, Ahmad Jamal, what's his name? Herbie Hancock just came out for his first album, Maiden Voyage. The Adderley brothers, and Nancy Wilson and Les McCain, and we were in our world. And that's how we learned about jazz, because there was nothing being played in San Joaquin Valley other than Ghostwriters in the Sky.
That's interesting, because when we finally, after we took over the radio station and we got on radio in college, our programming was on at 10 p.m. at night to 2 in the morning. And being kind of like the similar thing where radio stations compete, their signals compete, that on good nights when the weather was good, we were broadcasting from San Jose, we'd reach all the way to Oakland. So we had all these people calling from Oakland, listening, who would stay up late in Oakland, waiting for us to come on.
Nice. So, you say you like hip hop. It's not. You didn't say rap. You said hip hop, right? There is a difference. So how did it? How does it relate to your life and to those of your peers? How do you think hip hop relates to you?
Well, Chuck D had once said that hip hop is the CNN of the ghetto of black people, and I think I agree with that, because as much as I love other forms of genres of black music, hip hop sometimes is created really quick. Something will happen and someone will make a song about it that night, and it will be out the very next day. A lot of, with some that came from the Bay Area, a lot of hip hop is independent, they're not on major labels. And so, especially in 2021, which we're in, there's websites where you can just release your music on. So people are, when they're in the mood, they just drop a song. There's a new song, So, and then being that it's come from spoken word, people express exactly what they kind of want to say in hip hop, from especially the ones that are uncensored. And then they localize it. So you can hear what's happening in some kid in Cleveland or somebody in Mozambique, by listening to hip hop.
I read Jay-Z's book about, and I guess that's hip hop, right? He's more hip hop than he is rap.
Yeah.
And just the references that he makes to classical writers and other musicians and all that, I just had no idea that he was so profoundly touched by people that you would never suspect that this young man would know anything about. But after reading his book, I had a different appreciation of who he was and and the work that he had done. I can't say I always understand it, but I do appreciate it. I do appreciate it. But what would you say is the difference between hip and rap?
Well, I was going to say that you find a lot of hip-hop artists are basically the next generation from those jazz artists. I mean, if you take the example of Nas, his father, Alu Dar, was a jazz musician. And there's a lot of other stories along those lines. So a lot of the early folks who started hip-hop, or some of the rose the most prominence, had those direct roots from blues and jazz. And hip-hop is more the culture and the style, direct descendant of poetry. Rap is more necessarily what you do, but when like you are rapping, and it was first coined on record from the Watts Prophets. Most think it was from the Last Poets, but it was from the West Coast version of the Watts Prophets, who grew out of the Watts Rebellion. Shout out to Father Amdi. He's kind of like a elder of mine. But they had an album called Rapping Black in a White World. So that's when rapping was first put down on the wax and on record. But so when people today compare rap and hip hop, rap is usually the type of music that doesn't have as much content, or not necessarily saying something. And hip hop is more of pertains to the origination of the culture, or the things that came from hip hop, like DJing, graffiti, breakdancing, emceeing, and knowledge.
So it's contextual. It has a lot of context. Whereas rap is like in spur of the moment. This is how I feel about my bracelet. Yeah, got it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So, future projects for Mr. Hendrix. What kinds of things are you looking at for the future? And it better be money this time.
Well, that's the goal. I mean, the stuff we've been doing all these years really hasn't been around for money. But the culmination of most of our work is this documentary, which is Race for the Times. We call it the documental. Hook or by Crook, we plan to drop it next month for Black History Month, the first volume. Because of the pandemic and everything, we're just gonna release it digitally. We might put it on Vimeo, or might just put it directly on our website. We just want to get it out there. We've been working on it so long, and then we'll start putting into some film festivals and see what we can do with it. Hopefully, eventually get it on some digital platforms. We'll see what happens with it, but that's the biggest thing, and it's volume 1. And we already have 2 or 3 volumes set up and the footage mostly done. We just have to edit them. So, we basically got together like, okay, we're dropping this first volume. We're just going to drop it. This is, we have so much stuff that this is just the beginning. We may end up redoing the first volume and remixing it later, but we need to get this volume out there. Especially in this climate, over the past year, you've seen, more actions in the street and more Black people being murdered by police, and injustice is still here. And this is the kind of things that we've been talking about for over the years. So some of the people we talk to directly speak to these incidents years later. So we're like, we got to. This is, people are stuck at home watching Netflix anyway. So it's like they should be watching what we take. So that's hopefully is coming this year, 2021, Race for the Times. You can check some of our footage on www.raceforthetimes.com. We are also going to be pushing our radio station more, which is BLAXradio.com, and you can find us on Apple Music, TuneIn, Live 365. Basically, just type in BLAX Radio on any of those apps or platforms, and you come up with our station. And it's 24 hours a day in UK, United States, and Canada. So we're just now starting to expand our programming. We're going to start adding public affairs and podcasts like yours, and some things like that. And the biggest thing about the station is it's all Black programming. And it really covers all genres of music. We have a jazz show Saturday morning, soul throwback show Sunday morning. We got reggae and of course hip hop, which plays every night. And like I said, we're going to bring public affairs and talk shows. So basically, stuff we did back in college, we're trying to redo it and put it out there for real now. Awesome.
Wait a minute. Did you call your filming guerrilla filming? Did I hear that phrase or some kind of phrase?
At some point I did, I'm pretty sure. Everything we did was a guerrilla. But we also called what we've been doing as Black Power Media. We also coined that.
Tell me, when you say that, what are you actually telling me? What are you trying to tell me? Well, how did you go about doing guerrilla filming?
Poor college students didn't have jobs, so we just did whatever we could do to record stuff, from borrowed cameras to checking them out from school to whatever. So here it is all these years later. We have footage from like every type of camera you can think of. VHS, digital video tape, 3/4-inch tapes, which are the big old tapes that they used for TV back in the day. In fact, we were just talking about this, that we still haven't transferred everything digitally yet. We're still going through tapes from all those years ago. So,
well, Wes, I want to thank you for spending time with us and sharing the work you've done so far, and I wish you the best of luck on this film.
Yeah. The best way for people to follow us and get in contact with us, we're on Facebook, we're on Instagram, and we're on Twitter as Race for the Times. It's RACE for the Times. And we have a website, raceforthetimes.com. And then we also have Black Radio, BLAXradio.com. So if you follow us on any of those social media platforms or check out our website, we're going to put it everywhere we can so people will know about it when we release it.
Another suggestion, start writing about your experiences.
We just had this conversation. I guess that's one of the things I did mention we're working on this year is we want to write a book based on what we went through in radio. So that's our next thing.
It could be a primer for a film class. Seriously. I mean, that's
yeah.
Truly, it really could be. Thank you, Wes, for offering us all a look at how young Black technologists were allowed to experiment with untested technology, software, and hardware that were literally unknown to the general public. We will be looking forward to watching and listening to Black's Radio. You can follow Black's Radio at live365.com or Apple Music or TuneIn for more Black content originating from Silicon Valley. And that's BLAX Radio. Thank you, Wes Hendrix, and thank you for listening.